today. Apply is going to be on it this summer, which has been a little hit and miss in the past. Looking over at Triumph, Decod is on it this Orisa. If you need a guy to depend on, it's Decod.
It's in his name. They start with the same letters. Revival here running with the triple DPS look right out of the gates. And this is a look that's become more and more popular right as of late. But with the Sombra, anytime you're running the Sombra, you really want to have EMP as one of the first ultimates up. It's a great mid-fight tempo ultimate and a great opener, something that charges so quickly you might just be able to take your opponents off guard. And Tavik, as of right now, on the Pharah here, he is very well known as a great Genji, a good projectile player all around. And Revival looking to set up on the point first off, but Boger falls, and with no other tanks here, Revival probably going to look for a retreat.
So Revival doing kind of what XL2 is doing with Buds, putting in a DPS player to be your flex role. So Tavik, I think, is playing as that diva flex tank / flex player right now, and it's been working out. So it wasn't a question of who is he going to be replacing, hardest to reply. They're all going to be playing it together, and they have all got that intense energy as well. At least Apply and Tavik do. Tavik's going to get pulled out of the air.
Yeah, this has been a really long knockout, drag-out battle between Triumph and Revival. Triumph, who owns the point right now, but they had a really hard time cleaning up those kills. So when you have DPS on the field, you don't necessarily need a ton of bodies if you can just get a couple of players to pop off and find those frags.
Very nice hold off coming in from the hardest. Triumph, during this entirety of a fight, though, has owned the point. So they're approaching 40% as Revival's getting the upper hand finally near the tail end of this fight. They are going to be trying to flip it, but that's a good amount of progress for Triumph.
Oh yeah, nearly 50%. Revival, working with what they got, they're only running one tank. Triumph's running two. They have Icy on the Roadhog, a ton of point pressure, a ton of presence. So Revival, despite losing a tank really early on, Triumph couldn't actually pick off any of their DPS players. So they were in it as long as they had some bodies on the field. Hardest here on the Tracer, running a bunch of interference. But now that Revival owns the point, it's going to be a lot tougher for Triumph to try and flip this, especially against the EMP.
The EMP goes off, and 5 members of Triumph do get hacked. A couple kills, though, coming Triumph's way. Actually, is going to make this an even trade. It's a 4v4 right now, but with this res, Tavik is going to be that extra man that they need. Triumph has one available for themselves, but they do use it onto Awkward, so this is even Steven so far, but it looks like Triumph is going to give Revival a little bit of space before they re-engage once more. As hard as trying to take this Moth out of the air.
Really need this Mercy to go down. She's the lifeline to all of these Triumph players, and no, stunned too. Hardest forced to recall out of there.
Triumph maintaining a little bit more presence on at the point than Revival, causing the flip. It wasn't the end of a fight. It was kind of resetting. They were thinking about things, and during this thought process, Revival loses the point.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough things that you have to work with when you only have one tank. There's very few options. If you give up that space, then hey, you no longer own the point. And especially when Triumph are running a Brigida, it's really hard to get value out of your Tracer.
The hack goes through onto the Zarya. The hardest is not going to have his ally or self-barrier available to them, but HamTornado is very low and actually gets taken down, 3 hacked from this EMP from Apply, but once again, Decod is going to be the one that comes out with those kills. That's exactly what happened last time around. We saw an EMP from Apply, and Triumph really grinding this one out with an EMP. This is not usually what we see from a team like Triumph, but they're actually putting themselves in this. But with Paintbrush getting a couple picks, this is still going both ways.
Yeah, Triumph, though, do still own the point. This is going to be, nearly off the edge. Samito, though, manages to stay alive. This is going to be an overtime fight regardless. Revival now do have an option here, an opening. They take down Awkward. That's a big one. Big slam as well.
Shatter. 2 members on it. The ground Revival might finally be able to flip this point once more, which they gave up kind of in a thoughtless maneuver to Triumph a little bit earlier. Apply, though, going to be coming back with the EMP as well. So they're at 44% now, but before Triumph can actually compete here, especially with the EMP, it's going to be around 60%.
And this EMP is going to be the make it and break it for both of these teams. Revival have a beautiful option here. They drop the EMP first, buy Hardest some more time. They get the grab, and Triumph, with only a Lucio on the field, have no options for defensive ultimates right now. Lynx, though, can drop his EMP first, but the follow-up is what's going to matter.
EMP hits 5 members, but not the Sombra coming in from Triumph's place. There is going to be a counter EMP available for Triumph. They're going to be doing more with it. They're getting one more pick, so this is a 5v4 now for Triumph. They still have to take the point, but there are going to be some overshields coming in from Revival, but only hits a couple people. The value out of that wasn't that great for Revival, but they still own the point. Decod is taking putting up a 10 on the objective. They are able to flip it. Overtime has commenced, so Revival are going to have to flip it once more. The Graviton Surge is a really great way to try to do just that, as Triumph losing their HP and losing some bodies. They lost the mech as well, as Link's going to be the only kill coming in from Triumph from the beginning of this fight so far. Revival now coming right back into this, and we are going to see another flip.
There's still a chance for Triumph to come in here, but that's going to be sans really any ultimates. Lynx is their best shot to hit an EMP, but Apply's going to beat him there. So Triumph need a long sustained fight in order to come up towards these ultimates. Since they've swapped onto a very tank-heavy composition, there's no opportunity for the DPS to really pop off.
Overtime Wake has started. Decod does make it in at time. The pile drive is there, but so is the EMP from Apply. The initial pick is coming in from Revival, but the purple's going to make things a lot harder for Revival to stay in this, especially with an EMP coming in from Lynx. And Hardest it's going to get boosted off of the map. Triumph setting themselves up to take this round in a back and forth mega base, one that I haven't seen in a very long time. A game kind of ending, and just the process of this first round is very new to our viewers that we've seen so far here in Contenders. That was a lot of flipping and flopping.
Oh, undoubtedly. And man, I just can't emphasize enough how important that boop kill from Icy was onto Hardest, because he was like 75% to Grav, right? And that was the strength of Revival's comp, is that they ended up swapping to the goats and sticking with it way earlier than Triumph. So they ended up just with essentially an insurmountable ultimate advantage. Apply always had EMP before Lynx did, and they always had a Zarya up there charging the Gravs, which you're eventually going to get, even if you're playing a HamTornado style Zarya. So that boop from Icy was the nail in the coffin. However, Triumph have let some great opportunities slip them by, and even with DPS coming back into the meta, you can't rely on those clutch moments for every fight. Discipline is what will still reign supreme, even in a triple DPS comp.
Boger gets that initial pick onto the Widowmaker, and a word that you used in your analysis just a little bit earlier was clutch, and one of the most clutch members of Revival has been Manitin, who's not playing right now. When they needed that bomb, when they needed that interference, who was there? It was Manitin. This time around, it's going to be Vic, and that's a pretty good trade-off in terms of history, in terms of Overwatch, with Overwatch League experience, but Revival have needed Manitin to come up clutch in the past, and now that is going to fall onto Vic's shoulders, but as of right now, the point falls to Triumph.
Triumph cap this point first. Once again, a Revival here kind of struggling to get things done, but hey, we got two world-class DPS players lining up the kill feed. Man alive, Apply. And despite that early flip, Revival still not out of it.
This happened last time around, the Revival this time only going to keep Triumph to 19%. It took about 40% before Revival took advantage of their advantage and actually took the point. But with Apply's vision, they're going to know where Triumph is going to be sitting up. And in this kind of meta, where we're seeing this much mobility like we are right here on this round of Control, it's going to be really good to see where this Widowmaker is going to be perched, where this Wrecking Ball is trying to come in and get on it to the point and pile drive you right out. Apply right now deciding to use it a little bit later, uses it right now, is going to try to take Lynx down, and they're going to be looking at each other. So this is a Widow v Widow duel for the time being, but the Hammond is going to show up right behind them. The hack comes in, but it's not going to be enough to save Apply, but the Wrecking Ball does go down, and so does Icy, losing that fair 1v1.
And Epps takes down Smeedo as well, so Triumph right now struggling in order to get anything done. Apply, didn't really even need the Infrasight necessarily. The rest of his team was there. Again, a really good play, using the Sombra's invisibility to surprise, right? So anytime you come into this engagement, you can never guarantee that, hey, what I think is a 1v1 is truly a 1v1. That is a battle that Hammond would win against a Widowmaker 9 times out of 10, but when you throw Sombra in the mix there and get those hacks going, then it's really anyone's game.
Triumph is going to have their hamster hacked, and the Dragon Strike taking some HP away from Revival. The Heart is going to be killing them there in the sky. Ice is going to be unable to use that Rocket Barrage in time, and Revival is approaching that 80%, so Triumph aren't going to have a ton of opportunities to try to attack this point again, but they're winning it. So Triumph have those numbers. Revival, especially with that Biotic Grenade, are not going to last much longer, except if Apply is going to start popping off, and we've been waiting for Apply to do just the same thing almost all season, and on this Widowmaker, finally we're seeing the remnants of his hot hand that we used to see back in the day.
I love this. Apply really has a ton of utility here on his scan, not as much on the Zarya, much more of a lukewarm performance, but that's where the rest of of these DPS compadres come into Vic with a beautiful barrage. And Triumph, though, still in this, but now it's about the stall game. It's looking less and less likely that they're going to be able to turn this around.
Nice move and kill onto that Anna. Even though HamTornado gets a kill, this should be Revival's cap. Is there enough time for Triumph to come through? There is an EMP. There's some good stall tactics available to them. You get the monkey on there. You're using the Lucio to make sure that you get back on and to the point. But this EMP from Lynx has to be one of the best he's ever had in his life. It has to hit so many members of Revival, which is so hard to do since they're inevitably going to be spread out. The hardest is Slept, gets bioed, and then survives somehow. He's still on in the field, and so is everyone else from Revival. You cannot say the same for our friends of Triumph, who were able to flip the point once again. With these comps, it's been harder to maintain presence on the point, and Revival definitely feeling that. So what they need to do is to make sure that they're going to be able to get these picks and get back onto the point before it is too late. And with Vic getting another boot kill onto this Anna, especially with the rocket barrage to follow it up, Revival should be taking this round in the end.
Vic's been a great boon for this team so far, able to take to the skies, provide that extra bit of damage, that alternate viewpoint, that angle to attack, and Triumph really trying to match Revival rather than playing their O game, especially when you see, Samido swapping on to the Brigitte later on. You know that's a pick that you're using in order to keep a Sombra caged, in order to keep a Tracer away from the point. But unfortunately, Revival just built up such a massive advantage after that first point flip that Triumph were playing catch up the entire time and with insufficient resources.
If it wasn't for some free flips, just based on what Revival is running, Triumph, that would have been a little less close for them, as we're going to be entering our third round here. It's going to be Sanctuary. Revival looking pretty good, definitely heating up there on the second round, but the first round was good for Triumph. So let's see where this third round is going to land. We got Triumph and Revival tied here 1-1. And I'm really excited to see the Supply Lynx matchup on this Widowmaker once again.
This is going to be exciting, no doubt. And this is the same composition that Triumph took Hanger with, so they might find a bit more success here on Sanctuary. Icy's Roadhog was a big reason that Triumph did so well there. He's extremely accurate with hooks. So Tavik wants to maintain his distance right there, paying the Roadhog a lot of respect. But Apply! Man alive!
That's a one-shot, one kill. That's two of them for Apply. He's going to get res, so that's going to be pretty good for Revival. Not a ton lost out of that. Just a 30-second cooldown from that Mercy. Boker is slept, but now the Icy's gotten Paintbrush out of here. That is one less support. Eps can only do so much with that Anna healing, but it's going to get him closer to that Nano. As of right now, Triumph have actually owned the point, even though Revival had those initial picks.
Yep, and that's what you get when you run more tanks, way more presence on the objective. You can kind of just hang out there, right? It's up to Revival to apply so much damage that Icy goes down in spite of everything. And Apply really has been lighting things up with this Widowmaker, but you're really only vulnerable if you're a squishy here. And Lynx takes out Hardest to a 60% up to that EMP that could have been Revival's key back into this fight.
Yeah, Apply would have gone down too. That was a headshot, but it wasn't fully charged, so Apply was able to get the Widowmaker on at the other side. Icy also bio. That's brutal for those Roadhogs out there. It's hard to take a breather when you can't heal, but he's going to survive and take down Paintbrush at the same time. Revival only having those wall hacks. They don't have much at their disposal just yet. They're actually having a hard time staying alive, and even though, again, at the very beginning of this round, Apply got those picks, Triumph is up 60-0.
Revival really have no way to clear this point outside of straight up killing Decod and Icy. Boger has mines available, but that really is only going to zone away those squishies once again. Icy is a Roadhog, man, and if he gets the nano boost, he can face tank almost anything. Apply is going to pop those infra sights though, so Awkward and Chopped need to respect those sight lines.
Lynx has them at the same time, so everyone has the same amount of information from Triumph and Revival right now, and Triumph is going to do a little bit more with theirs, getting that initial pick. But Apply, once again, he's the one with the high-handed Revival. He's the rest of his team to kind of step up a little bit. Apply is doing his job. Hardest is going to go ahead and EMP, get the tanks of a Triumph. That's still not the value you want from your EMP. Drag Strike now coming in from Samito. Paintbrush is able to get the res off. Revival still competing here on the objective. The pile drive is going to keep those tanks busy, but in the end, Lynx is going to find those two picks. This is looking like all Triumph right now.
Revival right now really have no hopes to get back on here. Boger might be able to touch. He's right there. It just depends on how long he can stay alive, because Revival have no ultimates to speak of. Tvik, who used his barrage to such great effect to clear the point in the past, no longer has that option. He's down dead in the ground, and Triumph will take his control against Revival.
What's your take on what we just saw? Because it was a lot of flipping and flopping up at that point. It was a lot of the Apply doing some work on the Widowmaker. There's really not much that you can say outside, like, for Revival if you're talking about Apply, right? If you're talking about Apply's play, you're like, all right, he's doing well. He's doing exactly what he needs to do, right? He's gotten 2 picks a couple times, right? At the beginning of these fights, but Revival keep losing the objective.
This is just a tough comp to run. Single tank, any kind of single tank composition is going to have an inherent disadvantage when it comes to standing your ground, holding that space, right? So Triumph here on Hanger, they're also running an Orisa, but they had a Hog as well, and you can see how much effort Revival was putting into taking down that pig. He's getting constantly hacked, he's getting constantly purpled later on, but he's still just so beefy, a massive HP pool that's going toe-to-toe right now against Boger and the rest of Revival. And since they are running 3 DPS players, even though Apply has picked up the Zarya here and there, you don't have the option to go Hog. You don't really have the option to go Diva if that's something that you want to do, because one of the best ways to keep a Widowmaker cooped up is to close the distance on her with a Diva, with a Winston, a Genji, something like that. So Revival right now, they're trying out these triple DPS options, but it does mean that inherently they will have a harder time battling on the point.
Yeah, again, very, very interesting with Apply, I think, taking Lynx down a couple of times, and Lynx also finding value out of that Widowmaker. This has been a pretty good Widow v Widow duel. The Sombra v Sombra was more for Lynx, a little bit more value out of those EMPs. Apply having a harder time developing the EMP as well as making them impactful for these fights. So Revival losing out here on Mecha Base, I think, on the hand of a little bit of forced Sombra. But once he was on that Widowmaker, that was really when Revival came alive, and we saw that in the second round. It's just by the time we hit Sanctuary, Triumph stabilized. They obviously had a game plan that they went with, and Lynx started to pop off.
Yeah, they had Icy on that Roadhog, so incredibly impactful, because the thing with DPS is you find value if you're landing your shots, and if you're not landing your shots, you're not really doing much of anything, versus a tank who can hold that point, who can threaten a hook, which is very dangerous against heroes like Sombra, especially Pharah in the air. You have to respect that distance. So Triumph was really running a very multi-purpose type composition, whereas Revival had a much higher ceiling for damage, but you're going to find less consistency.
So what was Triumph doing to make sure that Revival wasn't able to find value out of that composition? Because we've seen this composition work.
Yeah, oh, certainly. I'm not quite sure there. I mean, again, if you take a look at the head-to-head, right? Lynx v Apply, or Apply v Squishies, RIP. Apply was just racking in numbers, padding that KD ratio, and it seemed as though Triumph weren't able to find as many kills. But again, in this objective-based game, they owned the point more times than not. It was always Revival coming back in despite losses due to the carryability of their DPS, right?
And we're seeing Apply pop off just a little bit. Tvik had some moments on the Pharah, but once again, I'm questioning where the idea came in to replace Manitin in this situation, keeping their 3 good, very solid at DPS, but I like Manitin in at this comp.
Right,
he's been super clutch throughout, and I know Tvik can be clutch as well, but Manitin has already proven that he has lived in that role before.
He's a great utility player. Maybe in last season, last season, you could say, hey, he doesn't have a great Sombra look, but he's been really grinding that Sombra as well. So again, a super high utility, multi-purpose player that, depending on what kind of compositions you want to run, you could find so much value from. Here with Revival's current composition, not really changing anything up, you do have a lot more heavy hitters, right? It's the Sombra role, something that's really great about Revival is the Sombra role is kind of just lives amongst them, right? There's no dedicated Sombra player. If, say, for example, with Bermuda, if Carter's in the game, you know he's probably playing Sombra, they're probably playing Sombra. Here with Revival, anybody can kind of pick up Sombra, they're all equally comfortable, but you do lack that second tank presence, which may come back to bite them on Assault.
Triumph going to be running our favorite engineer this time around. Samito is on that Torbjorn, my friends. We all know how much we, as Overwatch fans and lovers, love to see our favorite Swede. And Triumph now going to be rocking at that Widowmaker as well. And Revival going to make some switches. We're going to be seeing a little bit of hog from them.
I like this. I really like this. Kind of taking a page out of Triumph's book right here. It's, you know, imitation is really the greatest form of flattery. So we're going to be looking for those halt hooks, the halt headshot combinations. Boger has a lot of potential with this Orisa to set up shots for his DPS players.
Artist is going to get full. He's going to survive the halt out for Revival this time around. There, this is you know, the oink and yoink from both sides. See who's going to be able to yoink first. So it looks like there's going to be trades going both sides, 5v5, but still. So the way that this works is it's kind of like trench warfare with these Orisas, right? Especially if you're attacking with Orisa. There's only so much room you can make up off of those initial picks, but you can take that space and keep it.
Trench warfare is an excellent way to describe this. Who's going to break the shield first? Who's going to get a good flank, find that early pick to open things up? In this first battle, we had a trade, and because Triumph's Orisa was still alive, they had the room, the security to go for that res and bring the pig back in. Revival had to go back to spawn and wait a little bit, give up a bit of space and time. So it really does just all come down to those simple shield mechanics, right? When you're running a very similar composition such as this.
Link's going to get a nice pot shot onto the Roadhog, but that's not going to be enough. Icy going to get halted and then hooked. The oink and yoink is strong with Revival, but Icy going to find the kill onto Hardest instead. Instead, they bring the fear to them.
Surprise! You thought that you had an opening, but Awkward throws the nano onto the pig, makes him even more deadly, and Lynx picks off 2 more heads of Revival right now, kind of whiling away their time right now. At a certain point, you say, is this poke really working out so well? They've made about 3 meters of progress, taking down turrets as they go, and they've banked up a ton of ultimates, but have never really gotten in range to use them so far.
Triumph's got Supercharger right now. Not anymore, but that gave them an initial advantage during this fight. Revival going to be coming in with a ton of ultimates, though, so this is do or die for Revival. You don't take point A here, you're probably not taking it, even though Link's gonna be the defense that Triumph needs, getting Hardest out of this really quickly. Hardest has had a little bit of a rough game so far on both maps. Revival also going to lose their Zenyatta. With an ultimate advantage, they still don't break through.
Halt into Barrage is a possibility. Halt into Dragon Strike, another way to pick up some kills. But right now, Revival, every time they take one step forward, Triumph shoved them back 3 more. And Epps has been flip-flopping between this Ana and Zen, now back onto the Ana for a shot at a late fight Nano, but Triumph really playing this very comfortably, holding Revival at range, who have really yet to find value from Tvik's Barrage. And now Epps is actually going to swap onto the D.Va. Really interesting, just to see if they can close the distance.
You can see Lynx just taking away the field from Revival there. They have to worry about the Widowmaker, who currently has the hot hand, and that is going to be Lynx, and I guess you could say Samito as well, but that is a Torbjorn. He's going to be doing a little bit less work in terms of that aim, I think, than that Widowmaker, but as of right now, it's been all Triumph.
Revival have finally made the rotation onto the high ground. Apply now has swapped onto the Orisa, but Icy again lands a beautiful hook. Tvik has basically been doing nothing this entire game. The brilliant barrages that we saw on Downtown, not here anymore. They just haven't given him a chance.
Well, no one's really showed up for Revival here on Anubis so far. Triumph has been in complete control. Revival almost like Sisyphus, right? They get close to the point, and then all of a sudden they get rolled right back, and Revival, Tvik is on at the ground. They don't have a ton of point presence. Boger dies anyway. Round 1 complete. No progress for Revival. Didn't even touch the point, I believe. Triumph dominant against Revival.
Revival revitalized, but not in terms of capping points. Big struggle for this team right now to really get anything going. The difficulty when you're running so many DPS is if they have the hot hand, they can seem unstoppable. What can you do except hide from Apply's Widowmaker? What can you do except just duck and cover from Tvik's Barrage? But you have to get there first, right? And now that we're out of the Goats v Goats meta, there's no guarantee of a 6v6 team fight. You start to take it for granted that we're all going to meet in the middle, we're going to brawl it out on the objective, and then one of us is going to win, right? Ultimates almost don't even matter as much as a single player's mechanical skill in the DPS type matchups, because Barrage is always really great, but if you have a Widowmaker that has a hot hand, she doesn't need that Infrasight necessarily.
2 shots
run
gives
those
you a
shots.
2-man advantage, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Everything can change in a split second, and when you're pushing with DPS, you're inherently that much more squishy, and you can't guarantee that you're going to get within range to make a difference with your bullets.
So this is the issue that we were talking about back on Control that Revival could run into, is the fact that their D.Va player is not on the field. And yes, D.Va has become less and less popular as time has gone on. I did like Envy's new D.Va. He was filling in today. Movement, he was great.
Amazing community too.
Yes, yeah, very nice. Trump and Revival though, having Apply on the D.Va this time around, doing a little bit about that XL2 with Buds on the D.Va at times, but Buds also plays the Sombra, Buds also plays Mei, Buds also plays a Hog. Revival is having to split every single time someone else is playing that flex, and I don't know if that's something that's sustainable.
That's the big question, especially against Triumph, who are running Goats. No surprises here. You go for that consistency, right? If you give Lynx a minute and a half, he's probably going to get Grav, and you probably only need one Grav, might not even need that as Bogart goes down.
That's not okay if you're the Winston player in that situation. All you're doing when you're up close like that as the Winston is trying to develop charge. Paintbrush might have been able to bail them out, but Apply is already down. Hardest is very low as well. This could be an easy assault map for Triumph, and that it is, as Revival's unable to maintain anything on the point. And Triumph, man, 2-0 up the Revival, continuing kind of the trend that we saw from our last map with second win, just walking through wave check. Right now, Triumph is doing the exact same thing to Revival.
Revival needs something, some kind of injection of new fervor and gusto after this halftime war. They're looking to end this season with a pretty paltry win-loss. And Triumph right here really starting to come alive. They've, suffered some losses early in the season, getting, kind of it taken out of them, graduating into Contenders proper, but they look like a very strong squad right now. They really seem to know how to push the advantages of whatever composition that they're running at the time. They're not merely running it because, well, this looks good on paper. They seem to know all the in and outs. Yeah,
again, questioning exactly the comp choices around what Revival is running right now, especially with Manitin, such a great D.Va on the bench right now. And the other thing that's hard is, like, when you're in spawn and you're about to switch, we're gonna waste 4 or 5 seconds to be like, who's on D.Va, right? And all that time can compound on itself to where you're, I think, wasting a lot of it. And unfortunately, I think there was a little bit of that loss of investment of time there in spawn and throughout a lot of these rounds. But I'm sure they're going to make some adjustments over at the break. It's going to be 6 minutes long. Let's see what kind of things are going to change when we get back.